Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's our pleasure to have the Honourable Carolyn Mulroney, Minister of Transportation, here with us today to talk about all things transit and transportation, as those things are very important to the Brampton business community. I'm Vanessa White. I'm the chair of the Brampton Board of Trade, and also in my day job, I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer at Maple Lodge Farms, located here in Brampton. We're thrilled to have Minister Mulroney here today. As everyone knows, it's been a crazy few months so far this year, and a time that it's more important than ever that Brampton businesses are able to get their questions answered, and particularly as those relate to transit, transportation, and goods movement in Brampton and across our region. So again, a real pleasure to have you here today, Minister Mulroney. Before we kick off, I did want to just let folks know about what the Brampton Board of Trade has been up to over the last several months in terms of trying to support local business through this crazy time of COVID-19, and let you know about a few really interesting things we've been doing. So the first is our expert series, which we've been running regularly. If you log on to our website, you can find past recordings of those online webinars that are really providing support to the Brampton business community. We have a whole resource center on our website at bramptonbot.com/COVID-19, where you can find everything you need to know as a business in Brampton to help you manage through COVID-19 and move yourself from crisis into recovery and hopefully into thriving by 2021. We've been continuing to advocate for businesses on important issues, and we've also established a new series of peer-to-peer networks focusing on things like talent, like logistics and goods movement, and a new one coming focusing on international trade. So best thing you can log onto our website, find the details of those meetings, and we'd love to see lots of our members reaching out and joining those peer-to-peer network meetings. It's a great place to talk about important topics and also share best practices and make connections virtually. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Girish Nair, who's the Director of Customer Service from CN, to formally introduce Minister Mulroney. Girish, over to you.
Very good morning to all of you, and I hope everybody on this webinar is staying well and safe. And thank you, Vanessa, for that kind introduction. I would like to take a moment to thank you, Minister Mulroney, for your time this morning and to recognize the great working relationship CN has with Todd and his team at the Brampton Board of Trade. This morning, it's my privilege to represent CN and its 25,000 railroaders that operate our North American network. As all Canadians are likely aware, there remain a number of challenges with respect to the movement of goods and Canada's supply chain as we deal with a number of barriers, not the least of which is COVID-19. At CN, we continue to ramp up service to our customers and move goods after a challenging second quarter. CN announced not long ago that we're investing $2.9 billion into our network in 2020 to improve safety and increase efficiency and fluidity. Now allow me to get to my role this morning, which is to introduce our honored guest, the Honorable Carolyn Mulroney, Ontario's Minister of Transportation. Minister Mulroney was first elected as an MPP for the riding of York-Simcoe in 2018. Prior to entering politics, Minister Mulroney had a successful career in the private sector, in business and law, including working as VP of Bloomberg Sen Investments, and was responsible for corporate and regulatory matters at Wellington Financial LP. Thank you again, Minister Mulroney, for joining us, and a warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Girish, for that very kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you bright and early at the Brampton Board of Trade. And I'd like to thank the Board of Trade for bringing us together so that we, a diverse group of leaders, can use this platform to collaborate and innovate and drive the region's economic prosperity. Now more than ever, the people of Ontario rely on our collective knowledge and expertise to chart a course through the biggest challenge of our time. From the outset of this pandemic, our government has worked closely with both our federal and our municipal partners to ensure that Ontarians emerge from this stronger than ever. And that's why our government, in partnership with the federal government, is providing up to $4 billion in urgently needed one-time assistance to Ontario's 444 municipalities. This funding will help local governments maintain their critical services, those that people rely on every day throughout our recovery from COVID-19. By working together, we have united in the face of overwhelming challenges and secured a historic deal with the federal government to ensure a strong recovery for Ontario and for Canada. And that includes up to $2 billion in dedicated public transit funding, provided equally by Ontario and the federal government. By investing in public transit, we will help ensure transit services continue to operate so that people can get where they need to go as our province reopens and as people return to work. This is all part of our province's Made in Ontario plan for renewal, growth, and economic recovery. And while we recover from COVID-19, we are also taking this opportunity to improve transit and transportation in the GTA. Our plan will help us restart jobs and development while strengthening our communities. By getting shovels in the ground faster on significant transit and provincial highway projects, we will soon see more jobs for the people of Ontario, and the economic benefits of this critical work will be felt by families and businesses across the province. From the day our government was elected, improving Ontario's transit and transportation networks has been a top priority, and we must seize this pivotal moment in Ontario's history and make the most of what will be a transformative decade. That is why we're delivering on our promise to expand public transit in the GTA by passing legislation to accelerate the delivery of transit projects. This legislation gives the province the tools needed to ensure that its 4 priority rapid transit projects are built on time. These projects include the brand new Ontario line, the Yonge North Subway Extension, the improved 3-stop Scarborough Subway Extension, and the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension. We've also taken steps to offer improved service, additional trains, and more choice for GO Transit customers across the entire region. And I want to take a few moments to go through our plan and how it helps keep people and goods moving smoothly across Brampton. Last August, Metrolinx introduced hourly 2-way weekday service between the city of Brampton and Toronto, with some service extending as far as Kitchener. Metrolinx has also begun twin tunnel construction under highways 401 and 409 to allow for 2-way all-day service to Brampton every 15 minutes along the Kitchener GO corridor. These twin tunnels will be approximately 180 meters in length and are being constructed underneath 21 live lanes of traffic. This project is expected to reduce travel times by as much as 20%. And that's not all. Work is well underway on the new 18-kilometer Hurontario LRT, which will connect Brampton and Mississauga along a 19-stop route. Combined with our new subway plan for the GTA, we are making the region's transit an attractive, affordable, and low-stress alternative for individuals and families. As Brampton grows, we are building the kinds of transit options that give people the freedom to choose where they want to go and when they want to get there. In addition to growing our public transit network, this year alone, our government is investing $2.6 billion to repair and expand our highways and our bridges. We've also resumed the GTA West environmental assessment to improve Ontario's highway network by reducing travel times and alleviating congestion across the city and the region. The GTA West multimodal transportation corridor will include a new 400 series highway, extending from Highway 400 in the east to Highway 401, 407 ETR interchange in the west. The central location of the GTA West corridor will provide much needed relief for our existing highways. It will also connect urban growth centers, facilitate the growth of new employment and business areas, and create greater economic competitiveness. The GTA West Corridor will allow us to prepare our highway network for the future now. As we take these next steps in the planning process, we will continue to work closely with our federal and our municipal partners to keep the province moving, create jobs, and to help grow our economy. We're building an integrated and smart transportation network that will benefit us today and for generations to come. And as we adapt to the new realities on the ground, we will continue to listen as we take action to ensure that Ontario bounces back from COVID-19. Working together, we can connect people to jobs, attract businesses, and give Ontario a competitive edge through the development of the transit and transportation infrastructure our communities need. So I look forward to today's discussions and answering any questions that you have about our plan to keep Ontario moving. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mulroney, and you've said three things that are music to my ears, and I'm sure music ears of our listeners. You've talked about two-way all-day go, the GTA West Corridor, and the Huron-Ontario LRT. Again, all three very important projects to businesses in our region. So thrilled to hear the work is going on those. I do have some specific questions about those, and I'm going to come back in a few minutes. But if you don't mind, I want to kind of change gears and start off by talking about air travel. So I had an interesting experience in COVID where I had to drop a vehicle off for my partner at Toronto Pearson Terminal 1. And I got to tell you, it was eerie because I think I was the only person there that day. And it really struck home for me how fast and how hard air travel was impacted by COVID-19. I know we're starting to see some things open up, but I wanted to get your perspective on how important it is that we reinvigorate air travel, and then to layer onto that a couple of things. How do you feel we'll be able to do that and ensure consistency across the provinces? And then how do we start to a European travel corridor?
Sorry, what was the last part?
A European travel corridor. How do we start to move towards opening that up as well?
Sure. So I had the same experience that you did just recently. I traveled to Ottawa and for an event there, and was shocked by how empty Pearson was. You know, we all complain about how long it takes to get through security and find a parking spot and do all those things. And when those problems are gone, you actually miss them because of what it actually represents. I was struck by the fact that there are very few people walking around in suits and business attire. And that speaks to the fact that business travel has just really gone down. You know, as Canadians, we are spending more time at home. We're exploring our province, which is great, but not as many of us are traveling to other provinces, or of course, because of the border closures and the Quarantine Act that's in place, to other countries. So this has had a significant impact on our economy. Federal air travel is a federal jurisdiction, but since the beginning of the pandemic, I started having calls with transportation stakeholders, including the GTAA and Deborah Flint, who's the new CEO, who took over leadership of the GTAA at a unique and challenging time. And so I know that they're working closely with the federal government to address the challenges that airlines are facing and that airports are facing. The province has jurisdiction over remote airports, and so we have provided support to our 29 remote airports to make sure that our First Nations communities have the access that they need. But with respect to our larger airports, I know that the federal government has provided rent relief to them. They are businesses that are suffering and have experienced significant revenue losses, and so providing rent relief is an important step forward. I don't know how long that relief will be in place for, but a lot is being done to support the airports themselves, so that when airlines are coming back and when travelers are coming back, that they can welcome travelers back. But with respect to our travel corridors, I think that you know, the kinds of polls that I've seen about people's reticence to people's willingness to re-engage in activities that we did back in March indicate that Canadians are not as eager as you might think, or as some of our travel businesses and our airports require for them to come back. I think that a lot of Canadians and Ontarians are still a little concerned about the safety. That said, airlines themselves have great ventilation systems, and so you know, my understanding is that you actually, you know, with the cleaning protocols in place, you're in a good place. But from a movement of people, I think that we're going to be looking at a few more months of stagnant activity. Porter just announced that they won't be resuming activities until October, when their original plan had been June 1st, and they laid off about 1,200 people back at the beginning of the pandemic. So I don't think we're going to see airlines coming back for at least a month or two. And with the Quarantine Act in place, I think it's going to restrict future business travel. But in terms of a European corridor, I think that there's an opportunity there, but a lot of it depends on the Quarantine Act, because I think that is a major impediment to bringing back business travel, which is obviously something that we need very much to ensure that we inject some energy into our economy.
Absolutely, and it's so challenging to balance, you know, public health and safety with business continuity. I don't know anybody in a position who's trying to make those very, very difficult decisions. So, building on the topic of travel and transit and what you mentioned, border challenges, we have a question that's come in from somebody who's watching. In a B2B business where their client base is in the hospitality industry. So obviously the border closure has really had a massive impact on that industry, and then as a spin-off on our viewers' business as well. The viewers asking, are there any Ontario grants to help women in business deal with the problems related to their businesses that are directly linked to the closure of borders and transport challenges?
Well, there are a number of programs in place to support businesses and the challenges that they've been facing. We immediately announced a $17 billion package that included a lot of deferrals, which you're asking specifically about grants. We are looking at ways to address the needs that businesses are facing and have as a result of the pandemic. Each ministry that has an economic portfolio convened a ministerial advisory council. So I did that in the transportation space, and Janet Ecker was the chair of my board, and Lisa Raitt, former minister, federal minister of transportation, sat on it. We had a number of representatives from the transportation space reflect on the challenges that the sectors are facing as a result of the pandemic, and then advised the minister, myself, on recommendations. Lisa MacLeod, who's the Minister of Heritage, Tourism, Culture and Sport. And so the question came from someone in the hospitality industry. She had about 14 different tables of ministerial advisory councils, because it's such a diverse area to advise on recommendations. And so that's the kind of work that we've been doing since the beginning of the pandemic. To identify ways that we can targeted solutions for the economy. And those are things that we're feeding through to the November budget. So I don't have any specific information on women in the hospitality industry and any kinds of supports that we will be providing, but I'm happy to take that back and then feed that information back to Vanessa so that she can share it with your members.
That would be great. And I know that I did see, I was looking on our resource center the other day for someone else in my network who's a women-owned business, and I know that there was some support programs available specifically for women-owned businesses. So if you do pop on to the viewer, if you pop onto our website at bramptonbot.com/COVID-19, you will find links to several programs, and some of them were very specific to supporting women-owned businesses in Southwestern Ontario. So
But
have a look there
I'll
because
just
there may
point,
be something there that you could tap into.
yeah, and I'll just add that the question is important because COVID has had a particular impact on women-owned businesses, and they've been talk about not a recession but a she-cession, because it's had a significant impact. Women entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry and other sectors have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic.
Absolutely. And then when you layer on the challenges of childcare and again, all those other big problems that we're having to solve together, it's not an easy time for anyone, and to your point, particularly for women and minority-owned businesses. So appreciate certainly any support that government at either the federal or provincial level can layer on there, as well as making sure we continue to fund and support local service agencies and within our communities that support women as well. So
And a
all
lot
good
of
stuff to
that will
think about.
come through.
I'm going to pull
There
us
may
back.
be. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
You go ahead.
Well, we've just, I mentioned the up to $2 billion for municipal transit agencies, but it's a $4 billion package that includes supports for municipalities that will then go to social service agencies across the province that are run by municipalities. So there'll be supports in that way that we will be announcing soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So great stuff. I'm going to pull us back to issues of transport and transportation, and ask specifically, as you know, the CN Intermodal Terminal in Brampton is operating at capacity, and the development of the new proposed Milton Logistics Hub is currently completing the federal review panel consultations, and then we're expecting a decision on that by September 25th, which is approaching quickly. So we're all waiting to hear on that, but very excited for that. As you know, it's probably, as I'm sure you know, it's been a multi-year process, and the hub will alleviate a great deal of traffic and congestion in the city, so it's very important. Your government has taken steps to accelerate the provincial environmental assessments. What can you do as a minister to encourage that federal environmental assessments are completed in a timely manner?
Well, you're right. So it's a federal environmental assessment process, and I think to answer your question directly, we can just continue to work closely with our federal partners. We're each responsible for our areas of jurisdiction, but I think as politicians and as policy leaders, we have a responsibility to try to reduce red tape. And there is an extensive amount of duplication that happens at through the different levels of government. So with respect to the multimodal, I think we're going to wait for the federal EA to be completed. On our end, there's things that we've done to reduce red tape. We just introduced passed legislation that does really modernize the environmental assessment process in Ontario. The EA Act originally was brought into force about 50 years ago, and so much has happened since then, and other layers of protection have been brought in. And so what we tried to do was target areas that really were redundant. Municipalities would have to get an EA for a snowplow and to clear snow. And so these kinds of things needed to be thought through, and that's what Minister Urick, the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, did by bringing through this legislation. And it really is a much needed modernization of the EA Act. When Minister Laurie Scott, who's the Minister of Infrastructure, and I had regular meetings with Minister McKenna, the Federal Minister of Infrastructure, early on during the pandemic. She was very concerned, the Federal Minister, about how to get shovels in the ground. And one of the things that we pointed out was, you know, that duplication of federal and provincial EAs. You really only need one. And by having two, you're really slowing down the process. And that's something actually under Stephen Harper, the federal government did in 2008, 2009 to accelerate the investment of federal infrastructure dollars into communities across the country by mandating the requirement of only one EA. And so that's something that the federal government should be looking at, is that we've got to work together. We've suggested that we'd be open to that. So we need the federal government to also give consideration to that streamlining that I think will accelerate that, you know, like get things like the multimodal built faster. On my end, I also looked at ways to reduce red tape that impedes the investment of infrastructure dollars on the highway side. My ministerial advisory committee had advised that some of the measures that we proposed through the Building Transit Faster Act, Bill 171, could be used for highway projects. And so we did that. So we've eliminated the need for a hearing of necessity when building a new highway. It's a redundant process and it never changes the outcome. And so those are the kinds of measures that we brought forward so that we can actually get things built. And so, you know, it happens on the environmental side, it happens on the infrastructure side. I think people in Brampton will be very happy when the multimodal finally gets approved with the EA.
Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, kind of the critical, you know, we've talked about red tape reduction, and I don't think we have to look very far to find mountains of red tape, but those are the ones that really can help make a difference if we can find our ways to work through those very quickly. Because as you said, getting these projects going is critical. So many of them are so long overdue. And then when you layer on, you know, that there's some of them are still caught up in red tape, and that, you know, from start to finish, these are big projects that take many years. So I'm going to jump off from that point to go back to something you mentioned before about two-way all-day go. You know, it sounds like there's strong commitment there. We know that the Metrolinx board has approved the business case. How strongly do you feel that the business case will get funded, and when will we get started? Because it's my understanding that it's about a 5-year you know, to completion if it were to be fully funded today. And I think people in Brampton would certainly feel like this is already about 15 years too late. So what more can you tell us about that?
Well, you're right. So the business case came out last year at the end of 2019. And I hear it all the time, not a minute too late. Demand for GO is increasing across the region, but along the Kitchener corridor, the demand has been very strong, and the business case for it is also very strong. We've been working since I was appointed as minister. I've been working very closely with the Connect the Corridor group, as well as the Brampton Board of Trade, to work with some of the businesses along the corridor that would benefit from it, to understand what their service level needs actually are, so that as we're developing the business case and then moving on to the next phases, that we are meeting those demands. And I have to say, it's been a wonderful experience to work with your organization and also with Connect the Corridor. I think it's a model that we should be looking at for other projects as well. The commitment on behalf of the province is there. These kinds of huge investments take time. We've got to get it right in terms of the design, but we will be moving forward. Metrolinx will be moving forward to refine the scope and some of the service patterns that are required that we're hearing about from our partners. So the commitment is there, and we will be moving forward. As I said, we've made announcements about improving service levels. We did that last year, and now it's about making some of the infrastructure investments that are required to really get to two-way all day.
Okay, great. I'm going to transfer over here. We've got tons of audience questions coming in, so let me see if I can figure out how to how to find them. There we go. And need the glasses. Here we go. What is the timeline to start the construction of the GTA West corridor as the EA is coming to a close? So this was a question I had too. You know, it was great. The Premier was at a town hall here in Brampton last month, and obviously he is a big fan. We heard opening remarks that you're a big fan. We're all big fans. How can we make this happen?
Well, yes, we're all supporters. Maybe there's some people in the audience who are not, but generally the consensus view is that Peel and Halton, York region are in need of this new highway, which has been decades in the making. Our government was very happy to restart the EA process. And as much as I'd like, as we were talking about EAs, as much as I'd like to accelerate the EA process, given the enthusiasm for this project, certainly in Brampton, we've got to follow the process. And so it'll take a couple more years for the EA to be completed. You know, as I said, we want to streamline the environmental, we want to streamline red tape and reduce red tape when it's not necessary. But we want to continue to follow the appropriate procedures to protect our environment. And so we're going through that process. So we're currently planning and designing. We've had a number of public information centers. So we've been gathering feedback from community, from businesses, and we will be announcing shortly the technically preferred route. So we've refined the route itself based on the feedback that we've received, and we will be moving forward with an announcement in shortly. And I look forward to hearing more about that when we announce it. I'm sure we'll be getting more feedback. So looking forward to having more conversations about it. But yes, we are moving forward with it, but we are following the process. So.
Absolutely, and it's a critical process. I mean, the Credit River is an important resource to the region, so we have to make sure that you know that and the environmental assessment are done appropriately. But do appreciate that you know, that your recognition that this has been a long time in the making and that it is really critical. So glad to see that's going to continue to move forward. I have a follow-up question about that. Oh.
I'll just add on that point. And I know one of the biggest challenges is not just getting the infrastructure built, because it has the potential to reduce bottlenecks around the region and really help enhance the movement of goods and people. So, I mean, the highway itself will provide much needed transportation infrastructure, but the process of building a highway is difficult, and land has been frozen for a long time. And I have heard since my appointment as Minister of Transportation from so many different businesses or community groups about the challenges of having their land. So people want to know where the highway is planned to be, where it will be built, just so that they can have visibility on their own, for their own plans, for their own businesses and their families and their communities. So we appreciate that, and that's why we wanted to move forward, and we will be moving forward with announcing the technically preferred route.
That's great. And I wanted to ask a follow-up question to that. Recently, Brampton City Council has endorsed a concept plan that, or sorry, I'm not sure if it's the council, but the city has endorsed a concept plan for a development called Heritage Heights, which looks like a fabulous development that'll add lots to our Brampton business community and the community in general. However, the plan they've put forward recommends slowing the GTA West corridor highway to 60 kilometers per hour for a stretch as it goes through a boulevard concept through Heritage Heights. So obviously there's lots of questions about that. How would you respond to the concept of creating a bottleneck within Brampton?
Well, first of all, very happy to take input from our different stakeholders, including our municipal stakeholders. We want to work collaboratively with municipalities in order to get transit built in the City of Toronto and in York region. We've worked very well with the municipality and with the region. We want the transit and transportation solutions that we advance and we put forward to meet the needs of the municipality. So we take that input very seriously, and we understand that this is something that Brampton is interested in moving forward. There are competing priorities that we do have to take into account. We have to look at them. We've got to weigh them. We've got to balance it out. And the success of the success of the GTA West, making sure that we have an efficient movement of goods and people, I think is the #1 priority objective for the region. And so we have to weigh that against some of the other proposals that we receive. So the province has been looking at it. It's not clear. My understanding is that the preliminary review suggests that it doesn't meet provincial standards for design and operating speed and safety and some of the other concerns that we would be looking at. So at this time, I think it's not compatible with the GTA West. But that said, it does not take away from, I know how important it is for Brampton that they've put this forward, and we definitely take it seriously.
Yeah. And so I think it's a matter of working together to see what alternatives might be there, because, either or thinking won't help us. It's got to be together in both that will really help us, propel the region. So appreciate your thoughts and commitments on that as well. I have another audience question. So let me see here. Minister Mulroney, what is being done with the Bramalea to Georgetown bottleneck with CN to bring two-way all-day go on the Kitchener line all the way to Kitchener?
Well, I can just, as I said earlier, we are working hard to improve and get to two-way all-day go, and working closely with our partners, including Connect the Corridor and the Brampton Board of Trade. We're working very well with CN, and we have a great partner in CN to try to make sure that we can use their corridor, and that's key to it. So we are constantly, Phil Verster, the CEO of Metrolinx, and his team has a great relationship with CN, and we're working, I can tell you, at warp speed to try to deliver this much needed service enhancement across the Kitchener corridor, because we know how important it is. It's not just to get people from the end of the Kitchener line to Toronto, but it's also to get people from Toronto there. And so it has tremendous economic impacts and benefits to the entire region to get this service enhancement in place. And so we're working hard to deliver it.
Great. Another question that's come in, and it doesn't sound like from your comments to date you're planning to slow down any of the GO Transit related projects. However, with the pandemic, impact on GO Transit has been considerable. Given that ridership is down, so therefore revenue is down on the GO Transit side of things, do you anticipate that will cause any delays on the projects that were planned?
You're absolutely right. Transit has been the underlying economic model of transit has been altered as a result of COVID. Stay-at-home orders, concerns about safety, the need to implement physical distancing by people themselves, but also by transit agencies, the costs of enhanced cleaning. All of this has just really changed how transit agencies operate their businesses and how people behave on transit. But that said, transit never stopped through the pandemic. Subways and buses just about everywhere across the province kept running, and we're just so grateful that they did, because that's how essential workers got to the front lines of the pandemic. And so, across the province, I think there was only a couple of them that actually decided to stop operating. Given how essential transit is to our economy, that's why, as we've been putting together our recovery plan, making sure transit systems have visibility on what our plans are, has been a big part of what we've developed, and how we've been working closely with Opta and and the TTC. So we know how important transit is. Ridership has gone down, and we don't know how long it will take for us to get it back up to pre-COVID levels, but we know transit is essential. We know that there's a transit infrastructure deficit in this region, and we know that people will be coming back. And so that's, we don't want to delay our plans. We're conscious of the changes and the impact of the pandemic, but we are moving forward. So pre-pandemic, I think it was about the week before the pandemic, the Premier, Minister Sturman, and I announced the RFQs for the tunneling work on 2 of our priority projects. We just announced that 3 teams had been shortlisted for each one of those projects yesterday. So while we've all been consumed in managing our response to the pandemic, we still have been moving forward on our transit infrastructure plans. They still are essential to the economic prosperity of our region, and we don't dismiss at all the challenges due to lower ridership and increased cleaning costs, or just in making sure that the new realities are integrated into our plan. But if you look at other transit systems around the world where economies have reopened ahead of ours, ridership is coming up in some areas. We're looking so what we're doing is we're looking to the future for that day when our economy will be humming again and people will be riding transit back and forth along the Kitchener line.
Absolutely. That is good news to hear. And, to your point, it will come back and we will recover. And so I think it's critical that we keep our foot on the gas on those projects as much as we can. And that, they also provide really great infrastructure jobs that we know will help regenerate the economy. So we're pleased to hear that in spite of all of the additional layers of pandemic that everyone's had to deal with, that you've kept moving forward on those projects. I really believe it's critical for the region and the province.
Yeah, Vanessa, you raised actually a very important point, and the Premier said it early on when someone asked him this question, that our transit plan and our highways plan, these are core elements of our plan for the economic recovery because of the jobs that they will create. And we've also, at the same time, since the beginning of our mandate, we were developing our transit and our transportation plan, but we were also developing a strategy around skilled trades. Wanting Ontarians to recognize that careers in the skilled trades can provide stable, and exciting job opportunities. Students have been looking at going to, and parents have been encouraging their kids to go to university, but there are great opportunities in Ontario in the skilled trades. And as a result of our transit building plans, as well as our highway infrastructure rehab and expansion plans, there will be tremendous opportunity, great well-paying jobs for Ontarians, and that will also help reinvigorate our economy and help us get on the road to recovery.
Good to hear. And I may want to set up a side call for you and I, because I was on a call yesterday through Food and Beverage Ontario with representatives from OMAFRA and the Ministry of Labour, Skills Development and Training about how can we take advantage of this time to do some really specific and unique pilot projects to help, kind of reimagine how we get more people into skilled trades, obviously specifically in the agri-food business on that call, but really about how do we accelerate that, because it is such an opportunity for people in Ontario, youth in Ontario, to
and women
to
and
rethink
women in skilled
career
trades.
paths and women. Yeah, we talk very specifically about how do we get more women and youth at risk involved in skilled trades, because what a pathway. If I had to do it all over again, I think I might do it myself. So glad to hear that that your mindset is in the same space. So that's really, really good to hear. I have one more question that's come in from one of our listeners. Hi, Minister. Are the Here Ontario LRT extension, Main Street, and BRT for Queen Street examples of rapid transit projects you'd be interested in funding within the City of Brampton?
Well, as I said, we have the Here Ontario LRT project underway. A proponent was picked last year, Mobilinks, and there's been a number of other important developments on that project, like the construction of the operations maintenance and maintenance facility. We've procured the vehicles through Alstom, and so we're continuing to move forward with it. I know that Brampton City Council has resolved to have some changes made to the line. You know, in terms of in terms of changes to the existing line, this is incredibly difficult at this time as the proponent's been chosen and we've reached financial close. But with respect to extensions, the agreement itself does allow for that. I've had conversations with Mayor Brown and Brampton City Council about some of the changes that they'd like to see, extensions. Things involve, you know, tunneling, for instance, is something that they have discussed with me. So the agreement itself does allow for that, but it doesn't. The funding is not associated with any extensions. That we'd have to go get that funding. But we've also talked with Brampton about getting funding from the federal government as well, and partnering with the federal government on some of our major projects, such as extensions to the LRT. So it's not a no, but it's a not right now, because we've undertaken this extensive project as it is with these 19 stops. But look forward to having future conversations about other possibilities in the future.
Okay, great to know. I'm going to make one last call out. If anybody who's watching or listening has one more, we have time for one more question. If anybody has, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit that question. And we'll just give a sec to see if anybody types anything up here. I think we'll be able to get at all the questions. We're very efficient this morning.
Very efficient. Get started bright and early, get it done.
That's the way to do it. Well, why don't we, I'm going to turn it over to you, Minister Mulroney, for closing remarks you might like to make. We'll wrap up and maybe give people 5 minutes to their next Zoom meeting.
That's great. Well, thank you so much to the Brampton Board of Trade for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here with your audience and with your group. As I said in my at one point in my answers, I really enjoyed working with the Brampton Board of Trade and with Connect the Corridor. As I said, these are huge projects that we're working on that have a fundamental impact on the way people live and operate their businesses. And it can be iterative, and we can work together to deliver the solutions that people really need. We've just gone through an unprecedented moment in our history that has really changed the way we think about transit and transportation and business. Each sector is dealing with its own unique challenges, and it's only by working together and having forums like this where policymakers like myself and my team who's on the call can actually hear about some of the challenges, some of the concerns that you have, so that we can then build that into the way we think about what kinds of solutions we need to deliver. So thank you so much for this invitation, and I hope everyone stays healthy and safe.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we appreciate everything you're doing to help our region move forward, and to not just recover economically, but to really try and excel economically in general, and coming out of COVID-19 challenges. So we do truly appreciate the support, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us this morning. We know you've got a lot on your plate too. So for those watching, I wanted to just remind folks about a few upcoming events that the Board of Trade has planned. On Tuesday, we have the team from TD talking specifically about small business. And on Thursday, we have the planning department from the City of Brampton to talk about work they're doing on city development plans. So, and again, don't forget that we offer networking opportunities every Wednesday and Friday mornings for our members to come together and chat informally about their businesses, find new connections, and work through challenges together. So for those watching, please check out our website and register for some of those events. The ones I've popped into have been very helpful. I've learned a lot of good tips and tricks over the last several weeks through attending those meetings. So again, thank you to everyone. We wish you all the best for your day and your week and your month and the balance of your year. Thank you.
Thank you.